believe in the Book of Mormon. I didn't at first. At first, I got baptized without believing in the Book of Mormon. Don't ask, it's a very complex story. And my first bishop, after I moved, after 2 weeks of getting into the water, I believed so strongly in the principles, but I was a little sketcy on the Book of Mormon. And I went to my bishop, my brand new bishop, and he said, tell me about your testimony of the Book of Mormon. I said, yeah, I think you should de-emphasize that. And he said, have you read it? And I said, not so much. And he called me back for my calling, and my first calling was to teach the 14 and 15-year-olds the Book of Mormon. And I said, you got the wrong guy, dude. And he said, no, I think I have exactly the right guy. Because if you don't believe it, you shouldn't be here. So that's what I said to the kids on my first day of class. How many have a testimony of the Book of Mormon? And, they all raised their hands like all good little Mormon kids do. And I said, that's bullcrap. Now, how many really have a testimony? They were like, what is going on? Is this a test of some sort? And I said, look, here's what the bishop said. That we shouldn't be here if we don't have a testimony of it. So I'm going to be your teacher for the next year. And at the end of the year, if we don't all have a testimony, we're going for milkshakes. And they were freaked out. But by the summer, I had a testimony, and so did those kids. Because we ripped it apart. And we actually went and we looked at it. And we read it and we prayed on it. Now here's why I'm telling you this. I believe it. Too many of us, and especially this is like going to Rome. You ever been to Rome? Try being a Catholic in Rome. It's crazy. This is like Rome. It's hard to be a Mormon back east because everybody's always poking at you. Here it's like a country club. It is. And you probably take a lot of it for granted because you're not challenged every day. And you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, I know, my ancestors, they had Book of Mormon. Yeah, I got it. Let me testify to you now. The Book of Mormon is a book that was given to us for this time in this land. And it explains exactly what it's going to look like when trouble comes. And I don't know about you, but I can put new names against old names in the stories, and it all works. So here's what I'm saying to you. The reason why I'm bringing this up, and I've been wanting to say this for a very long time. Where the hell are the priesthood holders? Where are you? Thank you. It's time to stand up. It's time to stand up. You know what time it is. The priesthood is supposed to rise up and restore the Constitution. Now is that time. Period. Don't you go soft. Don't you go soft. We're in Dallas and we sit in our priesthood meetings and we talk about brother so-and-so who's got X, Y, and Z and all the troubles and everything else, and I sit there and that's all nice. But our country is burning down and the world is starting to be swept with evil, starting to be swept across the entire globe with evil. What are we doing about it? Apply our faith, and we are leaders. We are leaders. To whom much has been given, much is required. Now let me switch gears. Same goes for the Constitution. Amen. Let me tell you something. Pat Gray is the one that was responsible for me being a Mormon. And I didn't want to be one. Who wants to be one? Man, when he said, you got to come and try my church. And I'm like, no way. You guys are like no fun at all. He's like, if you're looking for truth, you got to look at everything. And I'm like, okay. He said, you got to come Sunday. And I said, all right, what time is it? He said, 9 to noon. Oh my gosh. 3 hours long? That's insane. I said to him, if your God's not powerful enough to get it done in an hour like everybody else's God, he's not powerful enough. I didn't want to be a Mormon. But then I started doing it. We were paying tithing and doing everything before we were baptized. Because I remember the bishop said, no, because it says in the scriptures, prove me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to feel good giving you guys 10%. Right. We started paying tithing. We started doing service. We had callings. And every time it would work out, and I'd be like, crap, I'm happy. And that's when Pat said to me, you know this stuff is true, don't you? And I said, yes. And he said, now here's the deal. Now that you know, if you reject it, you're in more trouble. And I'm like, that's something you should have said to me before you told me. Same thing with the Constitution. Now that you know that those things are true and beyond true, that is sacred American scripture. It wasn't Thomas Jefferson saying, you know, when in the course of human events, yeah, that sounds pretty good. He was channeling that. That is a God-inspired document. And so is the Constitution. And those rights are not about us. We as a people need to stop talking about our rights and start talking about our responsibilities. We have important responsibilities that we are going to be held accountable for. Do you think that God did all of this to have it lost by a bunch of people who just are ego-driven, who are selling their children into slavery because we want an easier life, who won't take the time when man can read any book, any words, listen to any speech from any time in his fingertips, on his phone, anywhere in the world, including in the air. And we just don't take the time to do it. Do you think walking up to the bar, the judgment bar, and the Lord looks at you and says, when did you live? I was there at the end of the Republic. Oh yeah, I remember you. Not good. This is a sacred responsibility.
We're all spoiled.
We are. And we don't know what we have. And our kids just think it will always be this way. It's never been this way. Ever. This is the best, as bad as we have it. The worst of us in America are the best in the rest of the world. The poorest are some of the richest in the rest of the world. It has never been like this. And do you think we did it? We didn't do it. Our principles did it. And now the Republican Party has violated almost every single principle. It's not Donald Trump's fault. It's our fault and the GOP's fault. The GOP betrayed us, and too many times, and we're doing it again. How many people have you heard say their principles are these? We just have to beat Hillary Clinton. That's not a principle.
Too many.
That's not a principle. What are our principles? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That we, the people, have a right to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the practice thereof. We have a right to the freedom of assembly, the freedom to petition our government, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. These are our principles. was at CPAC, and I talked to a guy who was trying to be reelected in Congress. He was trying to convince me that he wasn't the typical Republican, and I know how he votes. He said, I'm right with you. I said, that's fantastic. Let me ask you a question. How do you feel about what Barack Obama, how he's violating the Third Amendment right now? And he went, well, Third Amendment, it's pretty bad. And I said, it is. He walked away, and my son said, Dad, Third Amendment. I said, that's the one about quartering soldiers in your house, son. He has no idea what the Constitution even says. He can't even make it to number 3. We need people who understand the Constitution, and it begins with us. You don't notice your rights being taken away. Why do you think they built the NSA plant here? Why do you think they built that storage thing? Why do you think they built it in Utah? Have you ever wondered that? They say that they built it here because the water is so prevalent. You're in the desert. That's really their answer. The abundance of water. Here's the answer. Me, this is what I believe. You're docile. You're a docile people that are patriots that just want to do the right thing for America, and they know you'll never stand up when they're violating the Fourth Amendment in your state, in your face. You drive by it every day on the freeway. It's good to be decent. It's good to be firm in peace. But it is also right and righteous to stand up for the Constitution of the United States. Read President Benson from time to time. Read President Benson. I want to tell you a story. George Washington is my favorite guy. And there's a reason why the progressives got rid of George Washington. He was the first founder they tried to erase at the beginning of 1920. Because they knew if the people really knew who George Washington really was, they might start to emulate him. And then their plan would be destroyed. David Barton said you used to have to memorize, you had to study and memorize the farewell address. He's right. You should read the farewell address. Every answer we're looking for is in there, including the parties. He said, this two-party thing, it's not going to work out. And it will break down. They'll start to argue with each other. They'll start to punish one another. And in the end, somebody who has nothing but a desire for gain will use the anger between the two parties to punish the other one, and everyone will go along with it. Sound familiar? That's why we were supposed to read the farewell address, because you'd see it coming a million miles away. George Washington was not only a genius, he was a servant his entire life, and a reluctant servant. At 13 years old, he wanted to join the Royal Navy, which is a good thing he didn't, because then he would have been on the wrong side. But he wanted to join the Royal Navy, and he did. He took his steamer trunk and he walked up the gangplank and he stood there, put it down, stood there with the other sailors. And his mother was down at the bottom of the gangplank, and she was quite a piece of work. She was very, very dramatic, and she was like, "Oh no, George, please don't leave me." And I can imagine that the other sailors were like, "Dude, I can see why you want to go to the ocean." And he listened to her for a while, and then he picked up his steamer trunk. He walked down the gangplank and he put it next to his mother. And he said, "Mother, if this is where you wish me to be, this is where I shall remain." At 13, he began his life of sacrificing what he wanted for the benefit of others. When it came to the war, he didn't want to be the general. He begged them, don't make me the general. He didn't want the job. He, quite honestly, at the very beginning, he wasn't very good at it. In the summer, we had 20,000 troops. We lost every single battle until he crossed the Delaware. And by the time he got to the Delaware, the southern side of the Delaware, where he was actually going to join Congress, who had already fled, he only had 2,000 troops left. And none of them really trusted him. They thought he was weak. But it was Thomas Paine who wrote, These are the times that try men's souls. Where are all the people that were here in the summer saying, yeah, let's go get the king. Let's go after England. You were all for it. But now things are going poorly. You were a summer patriot. Don't you understand? These are the times that try men's souls. When it gets tough, that's when we know who you are. Look at how relevant that is now. We've all said we want strict constitutionalists. We all said we want smaller government. We believe in the Constitution and the founders. We've all, for the last 8 years, fought and gathered for it. Some of us have paid a very high price. And then, when it comes down to it, 30% of our ranks say, I just want to win and I'll take that guy. That's a sunshine patriot. But let me tell you, these are the times that try men's souls. And those who stand today will be remembered forever in the hearts of their countrymen. Because you will save the Constitution. Thomas Paine wrote words similar to that. George Washington got them on the banks of the Delaware. And he read them to his troops who were not wanting to go across the Delaware the other direction and go back into battle with him. And he read those words, and every single man got into the boat. And we won. Because we knew who we were. I don't want to be president. I want to go back to my farm. He ran for the first term, 100% of the vote. His second term, he wrote his farewell address at the end of his first term. I'm leaving. They convinced him, you have to stay one more term. He said, I want to go back to my farm. Please, it's too early. It will fall apart without you. 1787, the Articles of Confederation are starting to fall apart. They don't know what to do, because nobody in Congress will listen to each other. Nothing's changed. They're all weasels. They've always been weasels. They were in it for themselves. Even at that time, many of them were in it for themselves. Or like is the case today, many of them are just weak in the spine. They're afraid. They're afraid. And so they wouldn't gather together for the new Constitution. And George Washington, at 55 years old, after 55 years of serving others and winning the war, he's finally at his farm. And in the middle of the night, on a rainy night, a horse rides through the front gates of Mount Vernon. And a man slides off his horse and knocks at the front door. And George Washington opens the door. He knows the man. He had just ridden in from Philadelphia. And he said, General, you know the Articles of Confederation are falling apart. The country is about to slide into chaos and anarchy. The states won't talk to each other. The states are starting a war with each other. And we can't get Congress together. We need you in Philadelphia. Please, General, we need you in Philadelphia. You are the indispensable man. You are the only man that can walk into a room and the worst enemies will stop their arguing out of deference to you. Please, General. And in the only time that I can ever find in his whole life, he said something so unlike him. He said, have I not yet done enough for my country? And he slammed the door. He walked back into his house. In my mind's eye, I see him standing there by the banister in Mount Vernon and the stairs, doing exactly what each and every one of us do whenever we know we're being selfish, whenever God's telling us to do that thing we don't want to do. That's what I see him doing. The argument with the Lord. And I can't speak for God, obviously, but I think God probably told him something like this. No, General. No, you haven't done enough. Do you think you won that war? It was the most powerful army on the earth. You won the war. I won the war. You witnessed it. You really think you're done, General? Have you read the Declaration of Independence? And among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means I've got more you need to write down. And these rights aren't about you, General. They're not about any of you. You want the right to go farm? Let me tell you what I'm going to do with these rights that you're going to put guardians around. Because of these rights, that little kite that Ben Franklin discovered electricity. Somebody down the road, because of these rights, is going to channel that and harness it, and there will be electric light in people's houses. Somebody with those rights will dream of seeing moving pictures, and then moving pictures transmitted through the air all around the world on a television set and now a telephone. You'll be able to communicate with people all around the world. Airplanes will come from these rights. So no, General, no, you're not done. That night he got onto his horse and he rode to Philadelphia. He said very little in the Continental Congress. Towards the end, the states were arguing still. They had the Constitution almost done, but one state said they couldn't get it passed. They couldn't get it past their people because their people didn't send them for a new Constitution. And if you want a new Constitution, the rest of you states, you want a new Constitution, then you gotta pay our state. We need some pork. We need some gimmies. We need a deal maker here. Who can make a deal? And that's when Ben Franklin, who at 88 years old was in so much pain, he was on opium, so much pain he could barely move. In fact, they used to have to carry him. 4 men carried him in a chair because the cobblestones were too painful for him to feel with his feet. At 88 years old, still sitting and showing up every single day, he finally had enough and pleaded, please, everybody in this room, who can possibly deny that this country came from us? Who can possibly deny we as men screw everything up? You haven't seen the finger of God. You haven't seen the hand of God. You have seen the full arm of the Almighty. And now you want to take this document, which we're taking dictation from the Almighty, and you want to screw it up? Please, please. We were all brought together and born at this time for a reason. Let's not screw it up here at the end. Didn't work. They started arguing. What a surprise, the holdout was New York. And that's when the room fell silent because George Washington shifted in his seat. That's really all it took from him. And he finally stood up, and the room was as quiet as it is now. And he said, quote, "Let us raise a standard Let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest can repair the events in the hand of God. It was that phrase that began the American experiment. Now that's an awful lot of colonial speak. What did he mean? To translate in today's language, I come to you today and ask you, at a time when people don't know what to do, at a time when everybody's just looking for their peace, at a time when everybody wants to scream about their rights, at a time when people are even denying the very existence of God, at a time when we're all screaming, I want a deal. We were all born at this time. Let us raise a standard. Let us do this one thing perfectly right so we can hold it up and raise that standard for the entire world to see, because this is a God document. And let the entire world see that document and know what it means and know who we are and know that we are His humble servants. But let's not only raise that standard for the world to see, to which the wise and the honest can repair. Repair doesn't mean fix. It means to find shelter under. Let us raise a standard for the whole world to see that is perfect. So when there is a time of trouble, the wise and the honest will see what we did and know that yes, man can be pure, man can be better, man can do it without making a deal. They can stand for what is true, what came from God. And they will see that standard. And when they don't know, which way do I go? Do we throw the whole thing out? Do we start all over? Do we just keep going with more corruption and hoping that it will change? Maybe we should try socialism. The standard is there and it is perfect, and the wise and the honest will run to it for shelter. He saw you. I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I believe in Him. I believe God is not a watchmaker. God is actively involved in the affairs of men. I believe the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the one who parted the waters, gave us these documents, gave us this plan, gave us these men who were pure enough to raise that standard. They said at their time it would start to fall apart, but they trusted not only in God, they trusted in you. The Book of Mormon trusts in you, that you will see these times and you will run to the truth. I come to you today to give you this message. Utah has an incredible opportunity. So many Christians have been standing up, but all throughout the South, the evangelicals are not listening to their God. Let us raise a standard in Utah. Let us do this one thing perfectly right. Don't vote for what makes your life better, but protect those rights, because we have no idea what God is going to do with those rights in generations to come. Let us be the wise and the honest. The wise and the honest will run to the people with the Constitution, the people who will say, I will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and actually, for the first time, perhaps in 100 years, actually mean it. about what has been said here today, I want you to leave here and I want you to think about it. I want it to haunt you. I want it to haunt you. I want it to bother you. I want it to keep you up at night on what your responsibility is, not only on Tuesday, but from here on out. You were born at this time for a reason, and you know it. If you believe in my faith, you believe in what I believe, you know it. So what is it you were supposed to do to protect his rights? Do it, and do it now. And have faith in your principles. Have faith in the Almighty God of heaven. For as George Washington said, the event, it's in the hand of God. Thank you.